So, brother, what do you know about Iran, bro?
Iran
Uh huh.
used to be Persia, man, back in the day.
Yeah, but before that,
Babylonian,
no, Babylonia is in Iraq. That's like a different civilization.
Persepolis.
That's yeah, that's in like a that's in within Iranian civilization and within Iranian culture and within Iranian history. But what I'm talking about this country or like the civilization called Iran, right? So that place, especially the land between uh, surrounded by the Zagros mountain in the center of the modern day Iran, that place was inhabited by human beings for a long time, right? Before the agricultural revolution, before all those sort of things, even before hunter gatherers. So even if you look at people in South Asia, the way the genes and DNAs are differentiated is from it's differentiated from the Iranian, they just say they have labeled something like the Iranian genes or Iranian hunter gatherer or Iranian agricultural people. So that's how I wouldn't say diverse. I would say like how antiquated it is. They
Okay,
have.
let me stop it, man. Let me stop it, man. So just, why don't you tell me what's happening in Iran right now? What's the tension? What's the hot topic?
I mean,
What is everybody talking about?
they are they are in a war, bro. They are in a
Why are they having a war?
they are in a war because I mean they're fighting with America and Israel, and they
What
are.
happened? What happened, man? So Iran was a country that was not even in the picture. Because the way this, I'm gonna
It was not in the
take a
picture.
dark spot on the mark.
That's why we
Yeah,
are.
that dark spot on the map. Then what happened?
It was not in the dark spot in the map. So you know what happened. Okay, let's not go back in the time. Okay, let's go back in this 1970s, or
No, not even 9 What happened right now?
I'm telling you, we have to go back there. So after before
Let's talk
1970.
about the recent direct
Yeah,
military
it's
escalation.
also
Right?
you have to know about that part. You have to know about that 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 phase, that period,
Sure.
before you come to that. So let me just summarize. Let me not go into detail. Let me just summarize and let me tell you. So what happened was, you know, like before 1979, Iran was a, it was a, Western friendly country, right? And the women had rights and stuff. It was under some sort of a king who was maxed as a dictator, right? And a significant majority of people in Iran, amount of people in us. I mean, I wouldn't say majority. I would say a very vocal type of people in Iran. They were against the king and the culture and the culture that he was introducing. So what happened was uh, king got thrown out, and now Iran was ruled by all of a sudden it was ruled by like a Islamist, right? So and they and they made enemy out of everybody, because they were politically and ideologically different from people from America or Israel or anything. They did not believe in the way um, of America or Western ideology. So what happened was Iran, so they had to project their power, right? Because they are not Arabs, so the language is totally different. The identity is totally different than the surrounding Arabs. It was Arabs who brought Muslim to them. I mean Islam to Iran, but Iran was, but they never considered themselves as Arabs, right? Because they were like totally different people. So they had to do something that showed that they are separate than Arabs and stuff. So they also have to project the power, right? Like for example, if you go to Russia, it projects the power in in that belt, from Eastern Europe to the Caucasus, and all those places. So Iran has to project its power in the Middle East. So what he did was, um, it like it made an enemy of Israel, right? Out of Israel, it started. How do you make an enemy out of Israel? You support Palestinian cause. Okay, you can support Palestinian cause, like even a liberal democracy will support like a Palestinian cause, but they were starting to fund financially and through weapon to the enemies of Israel in Israel's neighborhood, right? And that was their way of projecting their power. So, and then this hostility, this started to happen. This started to build up, build up, build up, and now, like few months ago, uh, because America had like a very eccentric person, eccentric Trump as a president. So what he did was he just bombed the crap out of them with the help of Israel, obviously. So like Iran, like even the society, um, they are like they're like highly educated people and stuff. Like a lot of them they have like a PhD and stuff. Even with that, right? They were not able to fight. They are not able to fight America and Israel. Yes, they are able to defend themselves, right? Because of the technological superiority of America and Israel, they are not able to defend themselves. I mean, they are not able to like be aggressive, so they can only defend themselves. And the only reason they are able to defend themselves is the way how people, the society is. What is it like? How it's, I would say like more of a, I wouldn't say society, I would say like a more of a geography. Because like if you look at the Iran's neighbors and stuff, right? Like if you look at Kuwait or Saudi Arabia or like Dubai, UAE, all of them, the cities are located in the shore near the sea, right? So if you go to Iran, the big population center, they are in the middle, and that makes it very difficult for occupying force to control over or conquer Iran or control over Iran. Saddam Hussein tried it in 1980s, couldn't do it, right? And now I don't think it's like America and Israel they are trying to like put any boots in the ground, but what they are trying to do is like they are trying to um, mm, dismantle Iran's infrastructure. And in a way they are being successful. I mean they are being successful because like in the first day of the war, like in the first day when they attacked, they were able to hack, and they were able to hack all those cameras and all those electronic equipment in the country. I'm not just saying about the leadership. Like they did that for the leadership as well. They were able to track this Ayatollah, right? His movement, and he's like one of the most protected person in the planet. And what happened was like the first day of the war, the first day of an attack, America and Israel eliminated Ayatollah and all those 40 or 50 high-ranking officers. So like they did not attack from the bottom; they attacked directly from the top. But at the same time, like the way Iran's like leadership is designed is like one will have like two or three or even four replacements. So they were like quickly replaced. But at the same time, like this technique of directly attacking the superior instead of like ground troops has significantly uh, what do you say like weakened Iran. The only thing they can do right now is defend themselves. That's it. That's the only thing that they can do. So and if you look at America, right, and I want to talk about America at this time as well. So if you look at American history, right, that this is something that I find so fascinating. So in America, in every 100 to 150 years, one crazy, one what is it like, one eccentric president gets elected, and he does this sort of a chaotic things. He creates a chaos, maybe in the system, or or like, and that chaos fundamentally changes the way America moves forward. The first president was this guy. What's his name? Andrew Jackson. Right? He was a weirdo. He was as crazy as Trump. And after like a century after him, or like in around century or 150 years after him, there's this guy, Teddy Roosevelt, around like a 1901, 1905. The way he got into presidency and the way he got re-elected, that can be a subject of a different uh, episode. But as of now, like that guy was also very much crazy as Trump, right? So what he did was like, it was during his time where that Panama Canal was completed, and it was during his time, like where America started to project its power in the sea. So like the power projection thing in the not just in like a Western hemisphere, but all over the world started from that period, right? And that guy is like that guy was, I think he's like my favorite American president. But at the same time, like we cannot deny the fact that he was an eccentric. And around after like 125 years of Teddy Roosevelt, here comes Donald Trump. He carries the same weird spirit of Teddy Roosevelt and Andrew Jackson. So so what he does, it doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, and he was a narcissist, and maybe like Israel played along, and he played along. So or like maybe he wanted to have that in the legacy, or we don't know, because like Trump is pretty unpredictable person, so we don't know what's the reason behind it. So but at the same time, that the consequences of this war is not that good right now. It's not looking good for America as well, and it's not looking good for Israel, or it's not looking good for the world. I mean, it's not going to escalate. It's not going to be a full fledged world war, or like regional war or anything like that, because I don't think Iran has that capacity to fight that sort of war. Yes, it can defend, but defending and like going and attacking, they are like two different things. So but the impact is already there. Like if you go to the gas station, like, look at the price of gas and petrol and all those uh, liquefied LNG or whatever, all those like all those energy prices, like it's going up all over the world, right? And so the shipping industry has been disrupted. So this is an ongoing crisis, and I don't think um, this will end till like next president gets elected. I don't think uh, Trump will end this conflict, this war, because like the ruling regime of Iran, especially because like if you look at nature of Iran, the people of Iran, they are not as extreme religiously extreme as the government. In fact, they're like pretty liberal, right? Do you know like around like the education rate of Iran is around like 95, 96%, and I think 60 or 70% of the women over there, they have like a bachelor's degree. So that society is like a pretty educated society. But the ruling class over there, they have been like a fundamentalist. So fundamentally, Iran is a uh, it's a very a perplexed society, because the ruling class and those extremists, they are only like 10 to 15% of the people. So you can say Iran has around 100 million people, or out of, I mean, 10 million people, and out of that 10 million people, 1 million has I would say 1 million has say, I wouldn't say yeah, 1 to 2 million, they have like guns, and they are the supporter of the regime. So 80% of the people, they want freedom from that this ayatollah and this system, right? But like before this war, like there were like a huge protest in Iran, and there was a report there where they prosecuted us, and they killed around 30 to 40,000 protesters. You know that, right?
Mhm.
So that was now, like, people are saying that that was an attempt from Israel and America to dismantle the regime. However, they were not successful at it. So they came to the last resort of destroying Ayatollah Khomeini. And what they say now is his replacement, his successor, is his son. That guy is still in coma, or that guy is not medically qualified to be a leader. So, that guy is just a symbol right now. And that, Iran. So this is how it works, in Iran. So there's this government, right? Ayatollah and stuff. So there's like a regular Iranian army, right? And there's another thing. They are called like IRGC, Revolutionary Guard, Iranian Revolutionary Guard or something. So they are like a personal uh, soldiers or personal paramilitary force of the Ayatollahs and of the, what is that called? Uh, uh, of the, of the clerics over there, Islamic clerics over there, like especially those in power. So they don't, they don't follow the structure of the army and stuff, but so they directly report to the clerics. So Iran's government is, this is so if you want to compare Iran's government with the present government structure with America's government structure, so you can say this thing: the Chief Justice of Supreme Court is more powerful than the president of this country. So that is Iran's. Like, if you want to summarize Iran's, political structure, l- so that is how Iran works. So you can have
Talking about Chief Justice, or are you talking about the Pope?
no,
Well,
I mean, yes, he is like a pope, because he represents the Sia site, or whatever they call it. But at the same time, but at the same time, I'm talking from a political point of view. If you put it in American system, if we just like to compare it with American system, it is more, Iran is more the Supreme Court Chief Justice having more power over the having more power than the president. So, president reporting to the Supreme Court. Yes, president also has some sort of executive and administrative powers and stuff.
so no, what is it? What does it take to become a leader in Iran? Like, do you have to study law?
Are you talking about being a president, or are you talking about being like a Ayatollah?
Being a supreme leader. So, what do you need to become a supreme leader?
You need to, you need to be a cleric, like Islamic cleric, and after
What's a
that,
cleric?
there's like madrasas and stuff. The head of, no, the priest, like if
Like a pope, like a priest,
yeah, like a priest, and after that,
like a reverend,
yeah, like a Catholic priest, one priest for
a
like
reverend.
reverend Catholic priest, or whatever you're gonna say. So it's something like that, and then you have to go through that channel you get elected, you get selected, you will have some sort of supporters, some of them will have
So
like
how are you
vehicles.
getting elected?
You get selected by the committee over there. It's not
So it's not elected; it's selected.
yeah, it's, you get selected. I would say like say for some positions, like say like they are like 1,000 clerics and they want to select one, like they will elect one among for like they will vote among themselves and they'll elect one, or like if you go like a little bit higher position for like higher position and stuff, they get nominated, they get selected. So I think they follow a different system. So that pipeline is totally different. And then like just like popes, like they have mixed it with like pope, and they have mixed it with like American system, and at the same time like they have developed the system in such a way that it's kind of it's kind of difficult to dismantle that system at this point, even with even when the um, like when the people they intend to do it, because like usually in politics, when 2 or 3% of the people they do a revolution, that is enough to dismantle the government. Like if they go in the street and they do all those things, it's pretty like that happened in Nepal, or like that happened like all over the uh, Arab Spring and stuff, like that happened with Gaddafi, that happened with like what's his name, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. So I think like they were around like more than 3 or 4% people of Iran in the street, and even with that, like they were not able to dismantle this the government. They were not able to change the government. Why? Because like because it's a police state disguised as a religious state. But at the same time, yeah, like it gives certain type. I mean, some sort of uh, what's it like education freedom. I think that is the only freedom that the people have over there. So the war.
Education freedom, but to the freedom to study the Quran.
No, no. The like there are like lots and lots of engineers over there, man. Like they focus more on like STEM education, like
Mm.
So Iran is a pretty, I would say, like uh, as a society, it's pretty developed. It's pretty well educated. But
Sure, it's also a big history, right? So it's not a society that just emerged yesterday.
yeah, it's not like But I would say
One
like
of the oldest.
yeah, I would say like even India is a very older society, but like look at the education rate in India and Iran. It's and China. It just recently became like diseducated and stuff, like but uh
Okay, how educated is Iran? The 99% literacy
yeah, around that.
with PhDs, 99%
I
PhDs.
wouldn't say 99% PhD, but what I'm saying is like, like maybe 30-40% of the people population, or huge amount of people, they have PhD. The not the clerics, but the people who get elected and who become ministers and stuff.
Right.
A lot of them, like the people who are negotiating with like a Trump and JD Vance, they have like a PhDs. A lot of the people, a lot of the leaders who got killed, they have PhDs. And there are like lots of scientists, like who have been killed throughout the years. They have PhDs. They had PhDs. I mean, so they are like they are pretty educated society. Even though like they have to be extreme to suppress and to control, or I wouldn't say suppress and to govern the people. But I don't think that like the people are. Uh, I don't think people are like willing to be controlled, but they have no other choice.
What do you mean? How would you allow like some clerics to rule everything?
I mean, it was like before that. So there was like before that, like in 1954, uh, there was an election. I think 1950s. Okay, don't quote me. It could be 1952 or 54 or 55. So there was an election. So what happened was a democratically elected prime minister got like was like got selected to like rule the country and stuff, but that person was not friendly towards America. So America got the king, Pahlavi.
CIA and MI
Yeah,
5, MI6.
and then like and the king basically became the dictator.
Yeah.
and that lasted for around like more than 20 years.
And you threw, didn't you throw like a big ass party
Yeah,
in the middle of the desert or
yeah, yeah,
something?
yeah, yeah. He threw some. He did like some all sort of things, but and at the time, like the women were wearing like skirts in like Tehran and stuff. They would say like, uh, if you want to see fashion, like you either go to Paris or you go to Tehran. It was a different place,
Mhm.
like different attitudes and stuff. And just imagine like uh, just imagine like the society that changed overnight and what the people would have felt.
Yeah, they were very hip, definitely. Yeah, they listened to music. They were like really
Yeah,
fun loving bunch.
yeah, it just and you follow like and you have this something called like a moral police. I don't know the Persian translation of that, but that's like a moral police. And it's just the society over there is not that good, bro. I mean, it is very good. Like Iranian people, like pretty sure you have Iranian friends. Like I've had Iranian friends in my.
Yeah, they're super nice.
They're super nice. Like they are super friendly and stuff. And
Yeah.
it's just like the way it projected its power, like especially Persian, right? You know,
Yeah.
do you know the main language in Afghanistan?
Pushtun.
The no Pashtun. Another one is Dari.
Uh-huh.
Dari is the main language as well. So Dari is a dialect of uh, Iran. I mean Persian.
I see.
Yeah, it's Farsi. So what I mean is like in one of the countries, like I think it's like one of the stans, like not Uzbekistan. I think like one of the Kyrgyzstan or some stan, like one of those stans. Uh, Most of them they have like a Turkic language, right?
Mm.
And one of them has like a Farsi. And like so the thing about Afghanistan is even though like it is linguistically related to Afghanistan more, but culturally it's a South Asia. They don't watch like they don't watch like Iranian movie, like they don't watch like a Jafar Panahi movie, or they watch like Shah Rukh Khan's movie. So they're like so like what I'm saying is like Iran's the way its culture got radiated around its neighborhood is like pretty interesting. And they want to project themselves as a savior of Islam, or like or the leader of Islam. But there are like a three big players in that region. The first is Saudi Arabia, right? Because it was not a big player, but it just became big player like 60, 70 years ago.
Mm.
And Iran was always there from like a long, long, long time, right?
Yeah, from Sam with the Czars, yeah,
Yeah,
or even before.
the long time, like before like Buddha was born, before like Jesus, before like Rome, all this thing. And and the other player is Turkey,
Uh-huh.
because like Ottoman Empire was like it's what is it, like continuation. Turkey just thinks like it's a it's like a what is it a moral descendant of the uh, Ottoman Empire,
Mm.
and it has the right to uh, to be a leader. And Saudi Arabia is like, no, like we have Mecca, we have Medina, and we discovered oil in like 1920s. Now we have the money, so it's us. And Iran is like, no, it's us, because like we have been here like uh, we've been here since like a long, long, long time, like so uh, so it's us.
Mm.
So this fight has been going on for a long time. So and they were like Iranian. I mean, like I think after they got converted and stuff, like to make them look different than the Arabs and stuff, they adopted the Shiaism. They became Shia.
Mm.
So it's just like these three were always. I mean, I would say like first it was like Saudi Arabia was also under Ottoman Empire, by the way. So so like since 1920s, since 1930s, these three have been always been directly or indirectly involved in some sort of a power struggle.
Mm.
Turkey more recently, because because Turkey became a secular society in 1920s. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, he banned everything, everything religious and stuff. And now after election of this guy Erdogan, they are trying to
Bring it back.
yeah, bring it back. Yeah,
Yeah.
Iran, this war is I wouldn't say like war, man, because yeah, it is a war. I don't know what this is, man. Maybe it's a war, maybe it's a conflict,
Mm.
because America has wasted lots of dollars as well, and the loss of life is pretty minimum, compared to other places and stuff. And I think, Trump got this confident because of the way he captured Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. He just got there, went to the presidential palace, and just brought him to New York, and and made him face the American justice system. So I think he got that confidence from that. But
People in Venezuela are happy.
I, I don't think anything has changed, man. I think Americans are happy that Venezuela is under the influence now. So,
Mm.
and when they control Venezuela, they can control over Cuba.
Mhm.
So, there's in 1800s, there was this president called Monroe. I forgot his first name, Monroe. And there's this called
Robert Monroe.
Robert Monroe. So there was a doctrine called a Monroe Doctrine. It was just like America will only look at its neighbors and its hemisphere, and that Teddy Roosevelt changed it, and Trump is it's called Trump Monroe, because it's America will America's neighbors will be under America's influence. At the same time, we'll also project our power elsewhere as well. So I think that is what he's doing. But it's very difficult logistically. It is very difficult to fight the war in Iran, man. They couldn't win against Vietnam. They couldn't win against Taliban, and they were not even like a real soldiers, and I don't think they can win against Iran and stuff. America, because America, it it has very superior technology. The air force is good, the navy is good, but it's occupying force. Even they are good and stuff, but they are not able to achieve their objectives, be it in Vietnam or Korea or Iraq or Afghanistan. So so that is a problem, to be honest with you. I mean, America hasn't had a decisive win since Second World War. When it
Yeah,
puts
I don't think it's about winning, right? I think it's about enabling trade, enabling democracy, peace, whatever it is.
do you think
I really,
do you think Vietnam is a democratic state? It's a communist state, bro. All right, and what about Afghanistan? Look at Afghanistan now. The only thing good about Afghanistan now is they are a little bit more integrated with the world. They want tourists and stuff, but at the same time, they are as brutal as they were.
I mean, Vietnam, I think was a mistake, but then, do you know why, right? Why did Vietnam happen?
Just the projection, man. At that time, who was the bad guy? The communists were the bad guy, but they defeated the communists. That's the thing. It took them 50 years, right, from 1940 to 1990, around that time.
Mm.
So, but they what happened with Russia? Once Russia got broken down into pieces, I mean, USSR got broken down into pieces.
I mean, yeah, the idea of communism, it's done. I think it just wasn't sustainable. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't want to
I told you earlier, right? Because it's communism was an ideology that was created by a rich guy, who wanted to speak for the poor. I don't think
I mean, it sounds good on paper.
It is like,
Yeah, everybody is of the
it's a very
nice,
good thing on like
but then
paper and packaging.
it doesn't encourage
Yeah.
growth,
Okay.
innovation, all that stuff, right? Like,
For that you need like you need a form of capitalism, man.
yeah, communism is. I mean, you have to talk about socialism and capitalism, right? Not communism and capitalism.
Yeah, and like about talking about Iran, like uh, Iran, like it would have been a very prosperous society had this revolution not taken place. Or
I think Iran was trying to do something that was against some of the principles of U.S. and global politics and global
I
economics.
mean, yes, you can say that, but you can say like it was just like
Right? They're
just
trying to
trying to
sell
go.
oil in gold.
Yes,
Their own
I can agree to
currency.
that as well. But what I'm saying is like I'm coming from a different point. I'm saying the extremists are trying to take over. Like Iran is not trying. Extremists took over the ruling class, and they have been trying to do that for like centuries. They were not able to do it, right? And they did it.
And that's a formula that has been applied throughout the globe. Right? The extremists taking over. It started with Russia.
Yeah,
They had a Tsar one night. This guy, that's Putin comes in, and then after that, the extremists just took over, and the whole thing was just
yeah. Lenin, Rasputin was Tsar's personal healer or something.
yeah, but all that stuff. Uh,
Yeah, so
I wonder
Rasputin.
if Argentina was very similar.
Yeah, Argentina was similar, and what else was similar? Yeah, I think that everything was like pretty similar. Like even like Hitler, you know, Germany.
Yeah, no, you're in Germany, right? So I think there's the same thing in different.
Yeah, like
If you look at history, right? And
it
there's
was
different formulas. One
yeah,
is the extremists just kind of taking over,
yeah. So like just
right? Win or not.
yeah,
Two is you find some elected person.
obviously. But then I don't know.
Three
Like
is you have a king or a dictator.
yeah, this happens a lot in Africa right now. So even in like I would say like in India, like like look at the person our Modi has cultivated. He's a dictator, man. He's a like he is a elected dictator who gets elected all the time. So that's a different type of dictatorship. Or look at China. So it's also a dictatorship, right? They say it's a communist dictatorship, but the society is pretty capitalist now. Or go to North Korea. That's a dictatorship. That's like 100%. That's like and even South Korea is a dictatorship.
I mean, if you look at history, it all comes down to having a strong leader, right, who's experienced.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
but what I'm
you've
saying,
seen
like
other countries where you have elections every other month or something, or the government changes every other month. Yeah, they're all elected, but we can do nothing.
Israel
That's the
society is
point of having elections if you can't practice power.
Israel society is something like that, like the electoral system. They don't have like a direct representative. You vote for the party, and the party elects the leader. So that's the reason, like, Israel never has like an absolute majority.
That sounds like a British system.
Yeah. So it's, and I think like the worst thing is to have us to live under a certain type of dictatorship. Like not the person, the system that it creates
Mhm.
and how it impacts
Right.
the generation, like in the psyche of the nation. Or so like what is happening in Iran is an absolute tragedy. I mean, and I wouldn't just blame it on America right now. They were going through a tragedy since 1979 because they did not live under the freedom. Like I mean, they were experiencing a freedom as a human being, or like from a Western standard. But the next moment, like it's in a blink of an eye, everything changed, and like the women started to wear burqas. They were started to wear like they started to cover their head instead of wearing like skirts and mini skirts, and that's one of the biggest tragedy that Iran faced. And then it's just like being ruled by uh, a like a political structure, like that was cultivated like more than 1500 years ago. The world has changed so much, right? The world has changed so much, and you have to like can you follow the religion, follow the culture, all those things, but do not bring it and make it a political system. And that is the worst part of Iran, to be honest with you. And at the same time, like they let the people be free, and they let the people, I would say, they let the people to be like educated, they let the people to mm, you know and you give like you open one window, like you force them to open one window and you shut the door. You can so you can protest, right? And you can do all this sort of stupid things that you want to, even though mm, like they are not socially acceptable, but that is your right. And those are the things, like that defines a human being, right? Not like going to school or getting a degree, or like getting a PhD in engineering and stuff. That helps, like to an extent, but like you get that, right? You have that sort of education and stuff. And don't you think, like once you're exposed to that education, like you understand you don't understand the value of freedom and stuff.
All right, and I think people just need to learn how to respect cultures and
Yeah.
find the right path, man. We look at Ukraine,
Yeah, Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is.
one of the most powerful countries. At some point in time, then we're like, we're just gonna blah 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 stuff happened, and then they elected somebody,
They elected
and
a.
then
Yeah.
in the name of freedom, now they're at war, man. The whole country's almost done.
See, this is a cultural war, like with Iran, I mean, like with Russia and Ukraine. This is for, like for a this is to establish a cultural superiority, right? I wouldn't say, I'm not blaming on the Russians, or I'm not blaming on the Ukrainian. Like you have a good side, bad side, everybody will judge, like but what I'm saying is, like Ukrainian side, like before the Mongols destroyed the Ukraine, the Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, was that was called as Kievan Rus.
Yeah, he was the center of revolution.
It was the center of the, like in the Russian society, or like the foundation of the Russian society and stuff. And then, like Mongols came and destroyed, and like they established uh, a small camp in Moscow, and that became Moscow. Like, and that's where the civilization shifted. But the people who lived in the Ukraine, they developed their own culture, own language and stuff, right? And and Ukraine was a part of USSR. But when USSR got broken down into pieces, Ukraine became a different country. Until 1995, Ukraine had like nuclear weapons, and in 1995 they gave up nuclear weapons and stuff, right? And it's a Slavic country. It's since, like it was always a corrupt. The government and the structure was always corrupt, so they inherited that thing from communist Russia. So everything was a corrupt thing. I mean, the corruption was going rampant over there. So, like It was not as the SDI, the Human Development Index, and all those things were not as developed as, and they were not as developed as the Western European countries. So that society was like falling down, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to say like they deserve, those both of them deserve to fight a war, but like but it's more from like a cultural dominance as well. And like if you look at the history of Russia, like they always struggle. I mean, they're like, especially the modern day Russia, like with the Tsars and stuff. I'm talking from like after Russia became like an independent country and stuff, and they expanded and stuff. So Russia was always about finding a warmer port, right? Like the reason they annexed Crimea was because Crimea is always like Crimea is a warm port, warm water. It doesn't freeze in the winter. So that is Crimea. So and if you look at Russian ports like St. Petersburg, or go towards the east like Vladivostok and stuff, and they are frozen for like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months of the year. So that's the reason like their navy is not that matured. And mm, capturing Ukraine is it was a very symbolic thing, but at the same time it was just like China taking over uh, Tibet. You have to capture the resources, but at the same time, like Russia is trying to project its power within its neighborhood, just like India projecting its power in Nepal or Bangladesh or Pakistan or America doing in its neighborhood. So it's the same thing.
Isn't it like two coins of the same event? Is it like two
Yeah, it's just like
part of the same family? It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
same part of the same family.
yeah, and two faces of the same coin. Yeah,
Like yeah, shooting.
exactly.
Mhm.
So it is going to be a big tragedy. So, but what I'm trying to say is like we are not going to see a world war. We're not going to see anything like that, because the world is too connected, too interconnected, and people are greedy. I mean, they will try to, like they will try to assert their dominance and stuff every now and then, but I don't think world war is going to happen. Maybe like they will attack like North Korea and stuff, or maybe they'll go after some sort of dictator in Africa, or like or they will have like a regional conflict in Africa, or maybe India and Pakistan will fight, or India or Bangladesh will fight, or even like there will be like a small fight between, like I wouldn't even say fight, like small skirmishes between China and India or anything like that. But I don't think a big war will take place, because it's too expensive, and the world is too much intertwined with compared to before, with the trades and stuff, and the world is I mean pretty small compared to before. So I don't think that's going to happen. Yes, the people are going, like looking at the trend of the world right now, people are becoming more populist than before. People are becoming more right wing than before, but after 40, 50 years, they are going to be more left wing again. So this is like a sine wave, like, or a cosine wave. You just go up, you go down, you go up, you go down, and this goes for this goes forever till but till the end of time, till the end of human beings, till the end of humanity. Okay, bro.